I'm doing a Great British Bake Off 2024 bake-along. Let's get into Biscuit Week. So this week's signature bake was Viennese Whirls, which I had seen before on the show, but like the lemon drizzle cake from last week, had never taken the time to actually make. Now this challenge that I have set for myself is not a timed one, so I actually turned this into a 2-day bake by making the homemade raspberry jam the night before. And honestly, homemade raspberry jam is super easy. All it is mashing up raspberries with some sugar and lemon juice, and then cooking them until they reach about 220 degrees so that the jam will set when cooled. I let that set up in the fridge overnight, and just like that, I was already 30% of the way done with this bake. The next day required a little bit more effort. I started off by measuring out the ingredients for my biscuit dough, which, like most European recipes, was all in grams, and then setting that aside. The one tweak I made to the recipe was to add a pinch or two of salt because I could tell that these biscuits overall were going to be quite sweet. Anyway, I then whipped up my room temperature unsalted butter in the stand mixer, added the sugar, and then added the dry ingredients, mixing it until the dough came together. You actually want this dough to be quite soft, as the next step is to pipe it into the classic whirl shape. So I loaded up my piping bag, fitted with a large star tip, and then started piping my whirls. Now, my recipe recommended that you actually draw out individual circles on some parchment paper and then use that as a guide while piping, but I am much too lazy to do anything like that, so these were all just eyeballed. And I think all things considered, they turned out pretty even. I did incorporate a tip I picked up from watching the Biscuit Week episode, which was to pop these into the freezer for a few minutes so that they didn't just immediately melt when they went into the oven. Speaking of which, come back for part 2 to see the bake and build.